I accidentally guessed Chainsawman Part 2's ending. For the past year now, I have talked about pretty much everything that was revealed in this newest chapter. It's very eerie how close the similarities are. Fujimoto tends to be very unpredictable, so I have never been personally confident in whatever theories or ideas I would conjure up. But when you see it in the chapter, when it's told to you by Death, it feels pretty obvious, right? Like, of course War would want this. Of course this makes so much more sense. I find it funny that it's come together this way, but it makes me very excited to see what detours Fujimoto takes. Sure, the general idea, premise is pretty much identical, but obviously there's going to be more here. There's going to be twists and turns that makes the type of writer that he is being very chaotic. What is this idea? How does it all work? Well, let me tell you about it. There's a lot of important things to note in here. Yoru is trying to create a never-ending world war. Makes sense, right? But the only way that this is possible is to have death erased from existence. Also makes sense. How do you think Yoru gets to that answer? She has to be strong enough to weaponize Denji, to use Denji's erasure ability, or Pochita, to erase death from existence, which would allow humans to not die from anything, including injury, illness, etc., so Yoru can create her never-ending war. This is technically Nostradamus' prophecy. However, would you believe me if I said that the prophecy is actually a two-parter? See, it's easy to say that Yoru's plan right now was always Nostradamus' prophecy, that this was always going to happen, but it only happens because of death. Let me tell you about her. See, Death brought up something very interesting in this chapter. Originally, her powers were supposed to activate, which we knew, and it would wipe out mankind. We knew half of that statement. We knew that she would activate and that she wanted to stop herself from doing so. It's not something that she can control. What we didn't know is the repercussions. You would think naturally that death would accompany it because she's awakening, but wiping out mankind is a bigger scale. So of course, she tried to stop that prophecy, which technically would be Nostradamus' original prophecy. But because she changed that prophecy, she changed the future, or the prophecy, into something even worse. That is in her own words. I want to highlight her abilities activating and wiping out mankind because I think that's very interesting. About half a year ago, I talked about the sixth extinction, which is basically a concept that humanity or the world will go through periodic extinction level events. Depending on the type of extinction event would depend on the percentage of humans that will remain. You might ask the question, how are these extinction level events possible? It's theorized or hypothesized that the world has to have its great resets to rebalance everything out. It's mostly induced naturally. There is a lot of ways to look at it, but it's believed that the world has to reset to kind of balance things naturally. So you have big volcanoes, tsunamis, wiping out mankind, etc. And then that percentage will evolve and, repopulate the earth, yada yada. The sixth extinction is believed to be humankind, and this is a real world one, and the direct connection to that sixth extinction and why it would actually happen is because of a nuclear war. So that we get to a point where humanity kind of fights with itself and starts to cannibalize itself, and nukes would drop all across the globe, basically making it uninhabitable. This would be the sixth extinction. The world would over time slowly reset. Humanity would be a fraction of itself, so after that nuclear phase, the world could heal and humanity could hopefully be reborn once again. This is the general structure of what Fujimoto is going for, that humans are wiping themselves out, trying to evolve too rapidly, and it plays back into the previous actions that public safety was trying to take originally with erasing concepts to evolve humans further. If humans could erase certain devil concepts, they could evolve in different departments and basically become their own gods or devils, however you want to perceive it. But it changes things. It becomes very unstable and it breaks the, laws of the universe, so to speak. I say laws of the universe because it seems to me that death is quite literally a balancer, the same way that Pochita, being erasure, is kind of a balancer as well. Death originally was supposed to activate uncontrollably, mind you, and she would wipe out mankind. That is an extinction level event. She is a great reset to rebirth the earth, and whatever surviving humans would repopulate it once again, similar 2 nukes. However, because she has changed that fate or that prophecy, because she likes Earth and she wants it to be around, war has taken its place. However, war is not a great reset. War is quite literally the great final war. It is eternal, it is everlasting, it is a problem. So you don't even get the reset. You're just stuck in limbo with war and injury and hatred and just this amalgamation of the worst possible outcome of things. Here's the kicker. How do you think you would stop this? If death is a balancer, so is Pochita, which takes you down the idea of why Pochita exists to begin with, that his purpose is to balance out both the devil world and the human world. When things become too unbalanced, Pochita is brought in to erase the concept to uphold the balance. So now we are stuck between 2 very difficult decisions with 2 very unknown outcomes. Pochita, Denji, will have to decide who he actually wants to erase. If he erases death, which he won't on purpose, Yoru wins. If he erases Yoru, death technically could still actually awaken and wipe out mankind. However, he also has to personally accept that he is going to kill Asa Mitaka and Yoru, people that he's come to form a connection with, and erase them entirely. The third option is that he doesn't decide in time and Yoru manages to weaponize him, which means Yoru would go straight for death and she would become basically this being that carries the balance of everything, both devils, primal fears, horsemen, and the human world in the palm of her hand. Whatever she wants to happen could happen because she has the power to erase. This is the conundrum we find ourselves in. We don't know how to go from here. Logically, I'd imagine Fujimoto would want to build up this massive climatic end of war situation where Denji and Death and now Miri Shugo, who appears as well, alongside Famine and potentially others that they recruit, could actually take on war and her underlings, whatever beings she's about to bring forward. It's told to us that she's going after devil hunters. I find that odd. I think the only reason she would specifically go for devil hunters is if those devil hunters are associated with weapons or the army that she wants to build. So either the devil hunters themselves connected with devils that she wants, or they are keeping devils locked away in facilities similar to gun and tank, etc. I don't know why she would waste her time killing devil hunters unless some actually pose a threat, which there is a couple. It would be funny if she's going after Yoshida right now, for example. This means that we could also eventually see Kishibe, which is Copium, because we haven't seen him in years, but now would be the time to show up. But it would be funny if she's taking control of those devil hunters as well, which makes for a scarier situation. The possibility that Denji would have to face Kishibe, Yoshida, Kobeni, God forbid, and every other powerful being that's in there. It is really the worst outcome possible. Not to mention war herself is now incredibly strong. So Denji, Death, and everybody else has to build this little ragtag team to take her out. Theoretically, the only person that can actually do that is Pochita. The only thing I continue to question is if Death is confident that she won't actually awaken. There's no guarantee that she would or wouldn't. However, if it is directly connected and in relation to the amount of fear that goes into death and war, obviously propping that up infinitely so, Denji would operate as the Great Reset himself, where he would come in, take out war, which would stop death from wiping mankind, and thus hopefully sending everything back to a neutral zero. So far, this is all we're working with. It's quite a lot, actually. It gives you a really good frame and structure for how this ending is going to take place. In terms of pacing, I'm not sure, but it seems pretty logical, the steps that we take from here. Denji needs to figure out what he wants to do. He needs to figure out what type of idea that Death and her group have in response to Yoru, and then finding her is the first big thing. It feels like it's going to be really emotional, that Fujimoto is going to pull on all of the strings that he's built for Denji as a character, for Yoru, for Asa, and for everyone else involved. It's hard to see a good outcome for characters. I can see a good outcome technically for the world, but even for Denji and what he's been through and someone as powerful as him, I don't see his fate being all too generous. I am positive that Fujimoto is going to throw in a ton of flair and creativity to really emphasize the craziness of this idea. It all makes sense, it all works, it's all been here pretty much since the beginning. Now that we have have the crystal clear explanation for it. We know exactly where we need to go, and the ending stage has now taken place. I feel like I always say this, but I don't know how much longer we have. The final 30, 20, 15 odd chapters to get us to that ending. It's going to be sad, it's going to be miserable. Maybe it's something that we don't expect at all, typical to Fujimoto fashion with how unique he tends to make his endings.